going on? Okay, so today we are going to be talking about, I've titled this, How to Stop the Sleepless Cycle. So I think right now more than ever, we need to do the best we can to get good quality sleep, right? We've been talking about this theme of it being a challenging time. Well, it's way harder to navigate a challenging time when you're not sleeping and exhausted, right? If you're sleeping well and you're waking up with energy, you have the patience to, say, homeschool your kids. You have the patience to do work from home when normally you'd be leaving. You have the patience to and the energy and the focus to get up and do something instead of just staying in your pajamas and watching TV all day, right? So we need to make sure that we're tackling these things and understanding why we need good sleep, how it affects us. And then I'm going to go through my 8 tips, practical tips on things you can do to make sure that you're getting the best sleep possible, helping your mind kind of quiet as you're trying to fall asleep. And I just hope it's practical. And I hope at the end of the day, when we're done this talk, you can get a few tips on things that you can maybe change or add in that may make a big difference for you. That's my intention. So I'm going to ask that you hold any questions you have until the end, and then we can unmute you all and we can have a discussion about it, okay? So let me get through the material. So if you do have any questions, make sure you write them down, or you can put them into the chat bar if that's easier, and we can check that at the end, but I'll get to those at the end of the call. So first of all, why do we need sleep? Okay, so we don't often stop to think about this, but what is the purpose other than we just think, I'm tired, I need to go to bed, and but what happens when we're sleeping? Our bodies, our cells are regenerating, they're repairing, and they're growing. So sleep is absolutely essential for good health. You have to get good sleep if you want to have good health, period. So it's really important. It's important for immunity. Anybody think having a strong immune system is important right now? Hands up if you think that's important, obviously, right? We want to stay as healthy as we can. So your immunity, that's the part of your body that fights off illnesses and viruses. So we need to be getting good sleep. And just general quality of life and energy to help you have better focus and patience and all of those things. So sleep is really important always, but even more so now. Now, I want to just talk about 2 things that have to do with sleep, because it'll help us when we get into the 8 points. The first one I want you to really own and understand is the role of melatonin in your body, okay? So some of you might have heard of this, but melatonin is a hormone. It is the hormone that we naturally produce that makes us sleepy, okay? So if you're somebody who's lying in bed and you're like, I'm wide awake, my mind won't stop, chances are you haven't done the things leading up to that point to naturally produce melatonin, which will help you fall asleep. Okay, so it's really important that you understand, and that's we're going to talk about in a few minutes, the things that you can do to really push that melatonin production so it makes your mind sleepy and helps you fall asleep. Because if you're missing those things, that could be a factor in why you can't fall asleep right away. But it is absolutely needed, because think of it as when your brain thinks it's nighttime, it produces melatonin, and then the melatonin makes you sleepy and you fall asleep. Okay, so we got to make sure our brains know it's nighttime. And that's challenging in modern day society, because what do all of us have above us? Lights. Okay, so think like 100, 200, whatever years ago when they did, before electricity, right? Maybe they had candlelight, but for the most part, when it got dark, people went to bed. And that's because naturally their brains produced melatonin when it got dark, and then they went to sleep. Now, that brings me to my second point, which is our genetics and our natural circadian rhythms. So you may have heard this word before, but we have an internal clock that tells us daytime is daytime and we need to be awake, and nighttime is nighttime and it's time to go to sleep. And it's based on our genetics, again, because really in the scheme of how long we've been on Earth, electricity has only been a short duration. So our genetics are still based on times from before then. And it's ingrained in us to have these circadian rhythms in us. And what we know through research is the peak times for the deep restorative sleep is between 10 p.m. and 2 p.m. That's when we get the most healing aspects, the most regeneration, the most repair of our tissues and cells. So that's really important, because again, if you think ancestors, maybe they went to bed when the sun went down. So right now I think that's like 7:30, something like that. I don't quote me on it, somewhere along 7:30, it's starting to get dark, right? And in the morning around 7, it's starting, or 6:30, it's starting to get light again. I mean, that changes obviously as the year goes on. But for the most part, it's early evening. People like 200 years ago weren't going to bed at 11 p.m., right? They would have been going to bed at like 8 p.m., 9 p.m. earlier, right? Because they couldn't see. So our genetics are based on that. So that's what we know. It's really important, those peak times, in order to have high energy the next day. You don't want to be missing those times for the most part. Okay, so that's kind of the background in a nutshell. Now we're going to get into the 8 tips, the little more practical part. So my first tip, and there's a reason it is tip number 1, because I think it is the most significant for most people, is I encourage you to think about what you do for that hour before you turn the lights off and actually go to sleep. And are you like the majority of the population, are you scrolling on Facebook or Instagram or on the internet watching YouTube videos, or are you watching TV? This is what most people do. Most people have a TV in their bedroom. Not everybody, but a lot of people do. And they watch it until they like turn it off to fall over to go to sleep, right? So this is what I'll have you consider, is pay attention to what you are consuming in that hour before you go to bed. Is it the news? Is it like something that's really stimulating in a negative way? And let me give you an example, okay? So a lot of people right now are watching Ozark on Netflix. So imagine you watch the episode where, and I'm not going to ruin the show for anybody if you haven't watched it, but there's an episode that has to do with torture in Mexico, okay? If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Imagine you watch that, you click it off and try and roll over and fall asleep. And you're wondering why you can't sleep. Because think about how negative that is. It's scary. Think about what it's creating, the thoughts in your brain. You can't shut down from that, right? Or you watch the news, you watch the 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. news, and you get caught up on, okay, the death toll is this right now, world pandemic, this many people are done, or like maybe, when in Sudbury, unfortunately, a 70-year-old man passed away, right? So it's like 70-year-old man passes away. You turn the TV off and then you roll over, and you're supposed to be able to fall asleep without thinking about your parents or your grandparents, right? Like, think about it. So the material you're consuming is mentally stimulating, and it will absolutely influence your ability to fall asleep. Oh, there's Logan again with no shirt on. Buddy, you're making my day. Hi. He's so cute. So that material can either that'll stimulate you in a way that won't let your brain quiet down to fall asleep. And then also, when we just talked about melatonin, all those screens are bright. When you put a screen in front of your face, you're telling your brain it's daytime because it's a light in your face. Do you follow me on that? So we need to minimize at least an hour before bed. You need to not be on any of that, either negative material or screens. Okay, so you got to give your mind the time to quiet. Now that kind of leads into my second point, which is no screens for an hour. But in particular, what it is about the screens, which is kind of my second point here, is it's the blue light of the screens, specifically an iPad or a cell phone. And that is very stimulating. It'll block melatonin production. But here's the thing. You need to sometimes, you need to check your phone. Some people, your phone is your alarm clock. So even in the middle of the night, you want to check it and see what time it is. You look on your phone and it's this bright light in your eyes, right? That's stopping melatonin production. So we do have to use phones. They're part of our life. So there is a way that you can actually change your screen so that you don't have that bright light in your eyes, that blue light. And it's to turn it into more of a red tone. So I'm going to show you something that I've done with my phone, and I will give you the link on how to do it on yours. Okay, so right now this is my screensaver. I've got it set up. That I press this button here. Oh, hold on a second. I press this button 3 times quickly, and look what it does to my screen. Can you see that? So now it's like a red tone. So I've taken the bright blue light out of my phone, and now it's red. And then I just press it three times, and it goes back to normal. Okay. So if you look in the chat box right now, you're going to see I put a link to a website that teaches you how to do that on your phone. I believe it's only for iPhones. I'm sorry. I know iPhone. I'm not exactly sure how to do it if you have a different type of phone. But I'm sure you can just Google it. If you look at that page and, you know, you Google, what are the other phones called? Android phone, red screen, maybe it'll come up. You can't see the link, hey? I sent it to everybody. Here, let me try and copy it and I will resend it and see if this works. Maybe because I did it before you got on the call. Maybe that's why, Julia. Can you see it now? Okay, so that's the link. There's a whole process of things on how to do it, like it takes a few minutes to do it, but once you get it set up, it's set up. So now I don't use this as an opportunity to watch YouTube videos before bed, okay, because it's still light, but it's just in the middle of the night if you wake up, it's not that bright light in your eyes. Or if you're gonna do, because my next point is some calming activities to do instead of being on social media and that. And some of these calming activities do involve setting something up on your phone. So if you have to do that, at least it's not a bright light in your eyes. Okay, everybody with me? So first point was that hour before you're going to bed, get off TV, get off social media, get off the news, get off anything that's mentally stimulating in a negative way. So that way you can actually relax your mind. And number two, no screens, period. Change it so you don't have that blue light on your phone. Instead, it's more of a red tone, which is more calming and will still increase melatonin. And now the other thing, just generally with this hour before bed, turn off the big lights. Just have a lamp on, okay? So no really stimulating lights like you would have in the daytime, okay? Now the next bit is, okay, if we're not gonna be on our phones, we're not gonna be watching TV, what do you do, right? So there are calming activities that you can do in dim light that will increase melatonin and will not stimulate your brain in the opposite way, okay? So I'm gonna run through some of these things. Now, some of them you might be like, that's not for me, but other ones you're gonna be like, I can totally do that. And these are all non-stimulating things. So the first one, I am a chiropractor. If you're a patient of mine, you've gotten stretches from me at some point. Stretch. I like to play light, calm music while I'm stretching, so I'll do that before bed. So for me, you know, there's on Spotify, there's a playlist called Acoustic Versions of Pop Songs. That's what I like. For you, it might be classical music, it might be Jack Johnson, it might, I don't know what it is for you, but some kind of music that like, not your upbeat, you know, I talk about a kick butt playlist, not the stuff that's gonna make you dance, the stuff that's gonna calm you down. So you play that kind of light music while you're stretching, and that's a wonderful way, because a lot of people say they don't have time to do their stretches. Well, hey, let's do something positive in this time instead of something that's negative for you. So another thing is breath work or meditation. That's, I mean, obviously calming. I do a lot of that as well before bed. There is an app that is on your phone that's free. It's called Insight Timer. Now there are other apps that are paid apps, like Calm is a paid app, Headspace is a paid app. Insight Timer is very similar to those, only it's free. So I kind of like that. But there are ways that you can upgrade to get different programs within Insight Timer, but the main material is actually free. So when you go on there, there's a whole section on sleep. So there's guided meditations, there's guided breath work, just to like listen to somebody do the counting for you while you're breathing, just so you can kind of calm yourself. There's also a section on bedtime stories. So if you have a child, I'm sure, you know, especially if you had a young child, you probably read books before bed. Why do we do that? Because it's a calming activity, right? So they actually have adult versions of this. And there's a whole section on Insight Timer. There's also a podcast called Meditative Stories. That's the same thing. So they play kind of nice music and it's a story and it's just to kind of distract you and help you fall asleep. So some of these things we do as a kid, you can still do as an adult, but it is calming and it'll help you sleep. The next one is reading, again in dim lighting, but you're not reading a murder mystery. Okay, use the same that we talked about in tip number one. Maybe it's something, a positive, uplifting, personal development type book. The other category of kind of reading is reading a story that you've read 8,000 times that you find at this point boring. Bore yourself to sleep. Okay, so maybe it's like, or like, I don't know, like an old story that you would have read in grade school or like in school, like Huckleberry Finn or something, or like, you know what I mean? Like something To Kill a Mockingbird, or something that you've read a lot, that you know the story, you know what's happening, and it's just basically, you've read it 1,000 times and you're just trying to fall asleep because it's boring. Okay. So that's another thing that you can do. Then there's other things like knitting, doing a puzzle, doing a crossword, but these kind of activities that are done in dim lighting can help. Now, the one thing that I want to, well, actually, I'll get to it in a second. I'm jumping ahead of myself, but those are kind of categories of calming activities, right? So instead of doing the typical things that, watching the news, scrolling, why not do some of these things? And the nice thing about them is they're all, not only are they going to help you fall asleep, but they're also positive growth things. They're good for positive mental stimulation. They're good for decreasing stress. There's a lot of benefits if you think about the things that I just talked about. But those would be some of the things that I tend to do in that last hour before I go to sleep as much as possible. So that's tip number 3. Tip number 4 is your actual room setup. Okay. There are some things, tiny things, that if you change them can actually make a big difference. The first one is darkness. You want your room to be pitch black. So, for me, I used to, without really realizing it, we were leaving our door open just because I got a little guy and he comes into bed, or I thought I wanted to hear him. But the problem with that is the light from the street light on the street was actually getting into the room. And I didn't realize it at the time, but my sleep wasn't as deep. And it was harder for me to fall asleep because it was light. As soon as we started closing the door, and guess what? My son can push the door open. He's just fine, right? But as soon as we started closing the door, I actually noticed a big difference in my sleep. So you want to have blackout curtains. You want to close the door. Other things as well, if there's anything that's a light in your room. So your alarm clock, if you're someone that uses an alarm clock because you think you want to be able to see, I'm telling you that's affecting your sleep. So cover it up or turn it. If I go to a hotel or something, I turn the alarm clock backwards, so it's not a light in my face. So look for any of those little lights that could be affecting your sleep in that way. The next thing has to do with the temperature. So research shows people sleep better when it's a little bit cool as opposed to warm. So just play around with your temperature. You want it on a little bit more of a cool side. You need to be comfortable, right? So if you have an uncomfortable bed, not a really great pillow, you got to sort that stuff out. If you're uncomfortable yourself with aches and pains, maybe you need to sort out going to, say, a chiropractor or massage therapist, not right now, but, figuring out ways to combat some of these things. But you need to be comfortable because that'll influence your sleep, of course. And the last thing is one people don't typically think about, but Wi-Fi. So if your phone is right next to your head and the Wi-Fi is on and it's constantly connecting to the tower, that actually influences your brain's ability to calm down. It actually increases some of the cortisol in your brain. So I would encourage you to sleep with your phone on airplane mode if you can, or just turn it off. Because again, like some people like to use it. This is my alarm clock. So if I wake up in the middle of the night, I need to know what time it is. I can look over and see, or it is my alarm clock if I have to set one. But I don't want the Wi-Fi is roaming while I'm sleeping. So that would be something that I would encourage you to do. People don't often think about that one, but just turn it off when you go to bed. Then you're also not getting text messages and things like that in the middle of the night and getting beeps going off, because that'll obviously influence your sleep as well. Okay, so that's tip number 4, making sure your room is set up properly. And actually what I wanted to say about the airplane mode is because some people, to bring it back to number 3 about those calming activities, some people like to actually listen to meditations as they're falling asleep. And then, so if you're listening to Insight Timer, the free version of it, you're using your Wi-Fi. So you would have to roll over, turn your phone off, and then put it away. But if you did want to invest a little bit, when I said like that app, you can pay, it's less than $10 a month, but then it gives you the ability to download them. So that way you can play them without the Wi-Fi going. Things like, there's that podcast I was telling you about, meditative stories, that as well, you can download them in the day. So that way you can have your phone on airplane mode and still listen to them as you're falling asleep. That's something I do frequently. I'll have my earphones and I just listen to them, but it's on airplane mode, but I've downloaded it. And then when I'm done, or you fall asleep like that, who cares? It just rolls over, right? So those are my top 4 tips. Now we're going to get into my next 4 tips. The next two, numbers 5 and 6, have to do with things you consume. First one being caffeine. So caffeine is a stimulant. And again, from a research perspective, the time that you want to stop consuming caffeine is after lunchtime, if you can, okay? Because the biochemistry of it is it's still in your system at 10 p.m. if you've had, like, say, a 3 o'clock in the afternoon coffee. So you want to just only have your coffee in the morning. Now, it's not just coffee, but tea. Now, if you're having herbal tea or caffeine-free tea, that's fine. It's your Earl Grey teas and, orange pekoe tea, chai teas that have caffeine in them, okay? So no caffeine, no tea. Pop, like if you're having a Coke or something, that's going to have caffeine in it as well. And chocolate has caffeine in it. Now, if you're just having a tiny little piece of chocolate or something, that's not a big deal. But if you're having, like, I don't know, it's someone's birthday and you, like, have one piece of cake, and then after your kids go to bed, you're like, oh, I want another one, and it turns into 3 pieces of cake. You all know you've done it before. That's going to affect your sleep, right? So it's a lot of chocolate. So just try and minimize those things. Now, for some people, they might think this is obvious, and for other people, it's not. I just have a quick story about a family member, and she's one. Every single day, routine after dinner, they have their cup of coffee. And for years, it's just what she did, her and her husband, like, so my family members. And then for some reason, they decided to not do that. I don't know if they just ran out of it, or I think we might have been out of camp and they ran out of it or something. I don't remember. But after a few days of not doing caffeine at night, I remember she was like, I can't believe how much better I'm sleeping. Like, when your normal is your normal, you just think that's it. Because for years she thought, oh yeah, I can have a coffee after dinner. It doesn't affect me. I heard her say that before. And then she stopped doing it and she was like, holy cow, I had no idea. So sometimes we don't even realize it. But even if you're someone that you're like, yeah, it doesn't affect me, it might be affecting you even if you don't realize it. So try not to have coffee. If you have to have a coffee after dinner, just have decaf. Okay, just switch it out if you can. Now, the next one that has to do with things we put into our body is there is some research to show that if we are deficient in a couple nutrients, it can affect our sleep as well. So I'm going to go through, there's 4 of them have been shown. Now, this may be more of a minor one. You have to kind of look at it yourself. Like, if you're doing all the other things I talk about, then maybe it's this. But don't make this the first one you try when you're watching the news for an hour before you go to bed. Okay, you with me? Let's be kind of honest with ourselves. But if you have a deficiency in a mineral called selenium, that can actually affect your sleep. Now, you don't need very much of it. Literally, the amount in 1 Brazil nut is all you need in order to get your minimum dosage. Or if you're taking a multivitamin, you're going to get it. But that could be something that you can be deficient in. So selenium is the most common one. Magnesium is another one. I actually love magnesium for a lot of reasons. I take magnesium every night before I go to bed as a supplement. Or you can get it, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, spinach is high in magnesium. But think of magnesium as relaxing your body. So especially if you have tension, especially in like if you have restless legs, things like that, or just tightness and you can't relax, magnesium is like the relaxation mineral. So, and selenium as well, but magnesium is pretty common too. So that's a really easy one. You can just start to incorporate those foods or take a supplement before bed. That's a really common one I give to people. And the next one is vitamin D. So summertime's coming, thankfully, so we'll be getting lots of natural vitamin D. But in the wintertime, we don't get a lot of that. So if you do find that your sleep is worse in the wintertime, maybe taking a vitamin D supplement in the mornings can be helpful for you, because that's one that most of us are deficient in if we're not supplementing in the wintertime. Because I don't know who, when it's wintertime, is going outside in bare skin like this to absorb the sunshine. Not very many of us. And then the other one is omega-3. So omega-3 is a fatty acid, and your brain is a lot of fatty acid tissue. So omega-3 supplement is like fish oil supplement is really good for brain health. Now, you don't have to take a supplement. You can eat nuts, you can have flax seeds, you can eat fish a couple times a week. But if you aren't able to take those foods in, maybe a supplement is for you. But those would be, it's just really good for brain health, and sleep is controlled by your brain and hormones. So that's where that comes in. So those would be 4. Now I see I have a question. Where did it go? How come I can't see it anymore? I don't know where it went, but Julia, you had a question about the types of magnesium. So my favorite type of magnesium is glycinate. So that's the one that we've found that's most easily absorbed. If you have citrate at home, take it, finish the bottle, and then the next time buy glycinate. Okay, cool. So those are kind of the food nutritional stuff. Now we've got two more key points. Number 7 in my tips is your sleep schedule. Do you have a sleep schedule? Are you consistent with your sleep schedule? So when life is like normal, what a lot of times people do is they've got a good routine Monday to Friday, but then the weekend comes and they stay up super, super late and sleep in. And that actually influences your quality of sleep. Even like going to bed at the same time, if you're all over the map on the times you go to bed, that will influence your ability to be able to fall asleep easily, because your brain's all over the place. It doesn't have a routine. Your body needs routine. So remember I said earlier, 10 to 2 is the peak sleep time. My dream for all of you is that you, from 9 till 10, you do those calming activities, and 10 o'clock you shut the lights off and try and go to sleep. That would be the dream, because then you're going to hit that peak restorative time, but also your body's going to get used to that. It's going to get used to that routine. Same with getting up in the morning. Now, a lot of times, or like right now with the quarantine situation, I know a lot of you are sleeping in. I have gotten up at 6:30 in the morning every day since this started, and I haven't changed. Keep the same routine. I go to bed at the same time, and that's a lie. One night I stayed up late talking to my girlfriend in Australia because of the time change. Okay, that's a lie. I stayed up till 11 one night, but every other night I've gone to bed before 10, and I get up at 6:30. Okay, so the consistency is going to help. And if you don't have consistency, this could be part of the problem as well. So, consider being consistent with that. And so again, the calming activities from 9 to 10, and then 10 o'clock going to bed, and then up whatever time, just try and be regular with that. Now, number 8, the last one I've left for last, because to be honest, it's probably the most difficult thing. All the other things we've talked about, if you have a will, if there's a way, you will do them. And it's easy. You can just decide today, I'm going to bed at 10. You can decide today, I'm not having a coffee after 12, right? You can decide today, this is the calming activity I'm going to do, and I'm going to turn it off. That's just willpower, discipline, and just doing it, and understanding the importance of it, okay? This next one's a little bit more challenging because it's not something you can just do like this. And what I'm going to tell you to do is do the hard work from a mindset perspective. If you have a lot of stress in your life, if you are in challenging situations, if you've had a trauma in your life that maybe you haven't really emotionally recovered from yet, you can do all these things and it might help a bit, but it won't 100% help. You have to do the work. And that might involve therapy, right? That might involve getting professional help on how to handle and cope with these things. You know the saying, you lose sleep over, I'm losing sleep over, you might not even be talking about sleep, but it's a saying. Like if there's something massive going on and you're not dealing with it or handling it well, it will influence your sleep. So that's what I mean by that. So my 3 tips on how to handle this, and this is a whole other podcast or a whole other webinar that I could do, and I will touch on this. But number 1 is therapy, getting professional help if you need it. You need to assess your own situation. Number 2 is I did a webinar last week on setting up a morning success routine and trying to get 6 points every single day of self-care things for yourself. And it's doing that, right? As I said last week, you don't start doing this, do this for one day and then notice a massive difference in your positivity and your energy. It's a consistent thing. So doing this work every single day to grow yourself, and over time, you're able to handle challenges better. You're able to heal from certain things. You're able to be more positive, and that will influence what your mind is thinking about as you fall asleep. And the third part of it, which has to do with that, the morning success ritual, which part of it is really looking at what content you're consuming, and is it positive? Is it growth? Is it going to help you as a human? Are you watching, I don't know, murder shows and horror movies and things like that? I mean, maybe for you, I don't know, maybe that's positive for you. I can't see how it is, versus watching something funny or listening to something that's something like this that's going to help you grow as a human. following other personal development people, motivational speakers, those types of things, right? So what material are you consuming? Now, here's the thing. If you've got no anxiety, you've never had depression, you don't feel down, you feel joyful every single moment, you're not having stressful thoughts in your mind as you're falling asleep, then maybe this point doesn't apply to you, okay? But if you're listening to this, I imagine, you know, you might want more for yourself in this realm. So that would be something that I would, you know, what books are you reading? What podcasts are you listening to? What materials are you consuming? You guys know that pretty much every day I'm putting positive content out. Try and listen to, you know, if you're relating with me and this is bringing you positivity, then keep doing it. Or find somebody else. If it's not me, there's a lot of people that are putting really positive content out right now. But you need to do the work, and it's not just one day or 1 week. It's ongoing, right? As different challenges come up, you need to learn how to handle them in a positive way emotionally. So that way you can get up the next day and, you know, I don't know if any of you saw my video the other day, but my son had a meltdown over wanting to color Easter coloring. And then when I gave it to him, he threw it, he ran around, he screamed at me, and he lost his mind. He made a big mess. That was really fun. So how do I have the patience to handle that? Well, it's the things that I learned through doing my morning success ritual and the positive content that I'm consuming that have helped me to, you know, handle that little bit of a meltdown. So we were fine. So, you know, just something to consider, but doing the hard work and having honest conversations with yourself about it. So that's kind of review. My 8 tips on this is: number 1, get off social media, the news and the TV. And number 2 is no blue screens. So doing that for an hour before bed. And instead, number 3 is doing one of those calming activities. Making sure, number 4 is making sure your room is really set up. So it's dark, it's quiet, turn all the lights, get blackout curtains, make sure you're comfortable, turn the Wi-Fi on and make sure it's a little bit cool. No caffeine after 12 o'clock, period. Maybe consider some of those nutritional deficiencies and eating some of the foods that I mentioned, and maybe taking some of those supplements if you find you need it. Consistency with sleep schedule, consistency, and making sure you're hitting those 10 to 12 or 10 to 2 a.m. times so you don't miss that peak time. And the last thing is being willing to do the hard work, whether that's, you know, talking to a professional, starting that morning success ritual, hitting some of those things, or really starting to engage more in positive content to help you up in your mindset and help you handle challenges. So that is the material. Just a reminder before I get to any questions that you have is we're going to continue to do these. Just watching and have different topics ongoing. Share them if you know anyone that, you know, after you listen to that. A lot of times people will be like, oh, I know somebody who could have benefited from that. Tomorrow, Saturday, the recording will be up on YouTube. It'll be up, if you get our emails, you will receive it in an email, and it'll be on Facebook. So if you know somebody, just share it with them or encourage them to follow along with what we're doing. I'd appreciate that. Just thank you so much for participating. But let's take some questions now. If anybody has a question, you can unmute yourself, and I'd be happy to answer it. Julia.
I have a question.
Please.
What do you suggest with regards to waking up in the middle of the night? Because I have no issues falling asleep. You know, we do, you know, the scheduling and whatnot is not the great, so we can work on that. But I do my meditations before bed. The falling asleep is no problem. It's getting up at 3, or like last night it was 4 o'clock until 5:30 I was awake, and I couldn't try to do meditation again, putting in the guided and slow, nothing. I was just
so that's my first tip, is do the things that you would do at nighttime to fall asleep with. So you are rolling over and doing like a guided meditation and it's not working?
We have like Alexa. So I'm not even using my phone. So I don't see the blue light. Like, we've turned off like all of that stuff, but she's on the other side of my room, like really far. So I'll just say, my husband will sleep through it. That's not a problem. But so I'll just put it on.
So it's playing while he's sleeping.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's perfect. That's easier than dealing with earphones. So that would be my number one thing, is to do that. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can actually leave your room for a little bit. So go to another room and either do a meditation there, or even like just do something like quiet, like turn a little lamp on and do some reading. But you have to distract here, right? Or even like listening to like a podcast or something. So go distract yourself. So sometimes meditation doesn't work all the time. I find sometimes podcasts, but something that like not someone like super bubbly and energetic, like something kind of calming. Jay Shetty, I don't know if you know, have you heard of him? Jay Shetty. I find he's got a bit of a calming voice. He's in the personal development field. He used to be a monk. So that's why I think it's part of his voice. But maybe you find something like that, and then but again, remember how I said like listening to the same thing over and over? So if you don't want to go to bed, maybe you can try something like that, something different, and listen to the same one every single time it happens. But if you're still finding it's not working, I would try doing it in bed first, and then I would try like going to the living room. But if you're going to listen to something, don't turn the lights on. Okay, just sit on your couch and just listen to something, and then go back to bed. Or if you're going to read, then just have like a really low lamp. But I think you might need to change the material that you're listening to. Yeah. Cool. Is that helpful? Okay. Let me know if you're still like, a week or two from now, you're still having challenges, just reach out to me and I can talk to you more through it. Okay. Cool. Okay, Darla, I think you have a question. Hey. Unmute yourself.
There we go.
Yeah.
I'm just curious for any feedback on maybe perhaps sleeping issues with menopausal, hormonal.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess I haven't brought that up because I haven't experienced it myself, but I know it's coming, obviously. That's a tough one because it's hormonal. Is it that you get warm that you wake up, or just that your mind?
Yes, throughout the night, the hot flashes and
the
whatnot.
temperature. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
And then there's some periods of time though, similar to, is it Julia, where I will get up and it was like I feel refreshed, and it might be at 3 o'clock in the morning, like
listen to that for sure. Yeah. So I got 2 points on that. Number one is that one thing to remember is naturally as we go on in life, we will require less sleep. Now, Julia, I don't think you're there yet in the age of your life, but menopausal and as we get older, we do require. So there will be a time possibly that, 4:30 in the morning, you wake up and you're good. So pay attention to that, right? And then, that might just be part of normal. But from a menopause perspective, my recommendation to you would actually be to speak with a naturopath if you can. I don't know if you've ever been to a naturopath, but they're great when it comes to, especially there's a couple in Sudbury that I really recommend that are really specialized in women's hormones. And I've sent a lot of my patients. See, that's not my specialty because I haven't lived it and it's not really in my field. So I can't give you a specific. And I also know that there are a lot of supplements and different things that you can take, but it has to be specific to you. So if I'm like, oh, black cohosh worked for this person, but it might not work for you based on your biochemistry. So that's where a naturopath would come into play because they would know more of what's appropriate for you. So I don't really want to comment on that because I don't want to tell you.
Sure.
But that would be my thing for you is seeing a naturopath. And right now they are taking, they're doing it online. I had a naturopathic appointment last week and over the internet. So there are things that you can still do right now in this time. But check out Pure Wellness Group if you're interested in pursuing that. Dr. Tara O'Brien's excellent when it comes to women's hormones. It's really good.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry I can't give you a more specific answer,
but it's all
that's
good.
the best I got right now. Anybody else? We're good?
And where's Tara O'Brien, Dr. Tony?
So her clinic is called Pure Wellness Group.
Oh, Pure
in
Wellness.
the South End, in the Southridge Mall.
Okay, great.
Yeah, she's good. Well, thanks so much, guys. That was really fun. I love it. I love the engagement. Thank you so much. I hope you're getting value from these. And we'll see you next time, hopefully. Happy Easter.
Happy Easter. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good one. Bye.